a future where compassion is illegal and life itself has a price tag, a human walked into a marketplace built on silence and obedience. He didn't come to buy. He didn't come to save anyone. He just couldn't look away. And when he saw her, a living being with a barcode on her skin, he made a choice no one else would. He bought her just to set her free. The rain never stopped on Velith Prime. It wasn't water anymore, not really, just a chemical drizzle that smeared light into ribbons across the glass towers. Each drop carried the faint scent of metal and dust, falling through air that hummed with the pulse of power lines and distant engines. Evan Holt walked through it like a ghost, hood drawn low, boots echoing softly on the polished street. His reflection followed him in the puddles, gray coat, scarred face, eyes that never quite looked up. Around him, the city pulsed, holographic. Ads flickered between sale, 40% off Genware and upgrade your DNA now. It had been 10 years since the Orion Wars ended, and humanity had traded its weapons for something colder, efficiency. Now living beings were products. Evan told himself he'd stopped caring, that he was only here for the spare parts he needed to fix the generator back at his workshop. But when he stepped beneath the bright red archway marked the Market of Echoes, something in him hesitated. Inside, the air was too clean. Rows upon rows of glass display pods stretched out like an aquarium of ghosts, each pod glowing faintly. Labeled with neat corporate tags, Product, Lithari Fem, Class Bio, Version 6. 4 cognitive capacity, 47% emotive inhibitors, stable. Price, 12,400 credits. The crowd moved slowly, murmuring, eyes half-lidded in disinterest. Shoppers with platinum implants and designer lungs. They looked at the rows like browsing art, not life. Evan tried to ignore it. He always did. He made it halfway down the aisle before he saw her. The glass in front of him flickered with blue light, and inside, motionless, suspended by faint gravity, floated a figure. Female. Humanoid, but not human. Her skin shimmered faintly between silver and pale violet, like light refracted through crystal. Thin fractal lines glowed faintly beneath her skin, a living circuit pattern that pulsed with each slow heartbeat. Her eyes were closed, her wrists marked with a barcode tag. He stared too long. A vendor drone noticed. Interested in Product 11B? The voice was smooth, synthetic. She's a Lithari biomodel, genetically stable, language capable, fully compliant. Ideal for private service, companionship, or light technical labor. Can adjust emotional range on command. Evan's jaw tightened. She has a name? He asked quietly. The drone hesitated. Designation? Lithari Fem, Unit 11B. No personal identification registered. He stepped closer. The light from the pod painted his face in soft violet hues. Beneath the glass, a faint breath fogged the surface. Proof of life. Her chest rose once, shallowly, as if caught between sleep and silence. And for the first time in years, something cracked inside him. He thought of the war, of the cities, burning, of the machines that had learned to mimic mercy only to weaponize it. And he thought, we never learned. We just changed the tools. The vendor drone hovered closer, tone brightening. Would you like to make a purchase? Current market discount, 8% for veterans. Evan looked up slowly. You know who I am? The drone's lens blinked. We are linked to Central Records, Mr. Holt. You are a registered veteran, ID 33821. He reached into his coat pocket. His hands were steady, though his heart wasn't. How much did you say? Standard pricing, 12,400. Done. The words came out before he even thought. A flicker of system lights. Transaction confirmed. The pod hissed open with a soft hydraulic sigh, and for the first time, air touched the alien woman's skin. She gasped, soundless, fragile. Her eyes opened. They were unlike anything he had ever seen. Luminous gold, threaded with black rings, deep and unblinking, like the reflection of stars in a dark sea. Her gaze met his, and in that instant he felt it. Not gratitude, not confusion, awareness. As if she knew what being bought meant. The crowd barely noticed. To them it was another sale, another transaction. But to Evan, the world had gone silent. He reached out a hand. "You're free now." She blinked, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Free? What is free?" The question hung in the air, fragile as the rain outside, and in that moment, between a human who couldn't stop caring and an alien who didn't yet know what freedom meant, something irreversible began. The market of echoes kept humming. But somewhere deep inside, something had changed its tone. The rain outside had grown heavier by the time Evan left the market of echoes. The chemical mist clung to his coat, turning the gray fabric almost black. Behind him, the glass doors sealed, shut with a hiss. A perfect, indifferent sound, erasing all trace that anything unusual had happened. Beside him walked the alien woman, barefoot, trembling slightly, a simple gray cloak draped around her shoulders. Her steps were slow, cautious, like someone learning how to move through gravity again. Evan glanced at her, unsure what to say. She moved with an uncanny grace, fluid, deliberate, but her expression was that of someone seeing the world for the first time. Her eyes flicked up to the neon signs, to the people, to the glowing puddles that reflected both sky and city at once. Every color must have been strange to her, every sound unfamiliar. He spoke quietly. "You got a name?" She tilted her head slightly. "Name? Designation?" He shook his head. "No, not a number. Something you choose. Something that's yours." She blinked. "Mine." Her gaze dropped to her reflection in the puddle. The lights of the city fractured over her skin, violet and gold dancing like liquid glass. "I was 11B. "Not anymore," he said. After a moment she whispered, "Then, call me Lyra." Evan smiled faintly, the first time in years. "Lyra. All right then." They reached the outer streets, where the towers gave way to the older districts. The rain fell in heavier drops here, bouncing off old steel and concrete, carrying the smell of ozone and oil. A few hover trucks rumbled overhead, cutting through the fog. Lyra flinched at the noise. Her hands rose to her ears instinctively, as if the world itself was too loud. "You'll get used to it," he murmured. "Cities like this never sleep." Her eyes darted to his face. "You live here?" "For now," he said. "Not much choice." He didn't explain more. The less she knew about him, the better. At least, that's what he told himself. They turned down a narrow alley lit by flickering signage. A metal gate slid open as he scanned his ID chip, revealing a dim stairwell descending beneath the street. Evan's workshop was half shelter, half tomb. Old hollow screens glowed faintly on the walls, parts of drones and ship engines scattered like bones. A single cot, a stack of ration bars, and a cracked window overlooking the slums below. He guided her to a seat by the heater. Lyra sat stiffly, hands folded in her lap, watching him with that unblinking, alien stillness. He poured her a cup of synthetic water. "You hungry?" She hesitated. "I don't know." He frowned slightly. "They never fed you?" "Fed?" She looked confused. "I was sustained through the pod. No hunger, no sleep, only stillness." "Biostasis," he muttered. "Figures." She tilted her head. "Are you my owner now?" The words hit him like a blade. He froze mid-motion, setting down the cup slowly. "No," he said, voice low. "No one owns anyone here." Lyra studied him for a long time, as if trying to understand the shape of those words. "Then why did you purchase me?" he exhaled, leaning back. "Because it was wrong. You shouldn't have been in there." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You risked your credits, your identity, for something you say was wrong." Evan met her gaze. "Yeah, guess I did." She fell silent again. Her gaze dropped to her hands. Long, delicate fingers that glowed faintly along the veins, the light pulsing like a heartbeat. "What happens now?" she asked. Evan hesitated. "I don't know," he admitted. "But you can't go back out there. They'll track you, reclaim you." She looked up sharply. "Reclaim?" "Everything in that market was registered property," he said. Even after you're sold, they can track the biosignature. If they find out you were removed from an active registry without corporate contract, her expression changed. Not fear exactly, but realization. Then I am still not free. Evan stared into the glow of the heater. The orange light flickered across his face, carving the lines deeper. No, he said softly. Not yet. Hours passed. Lyra sat curled near the heater, watching the steam rise from the vent. Evan worked quietly on a broken drone, the hum of his tools blending with the rhythm of her breathing. At one point she spoke, almost in a whisper. In my stasis, I dreamed of a light. It wasn't like this world, it was warm, and it spoke without words. He looked up, puzzled. You dreamed? Yes. She paused. Are humans not machines? He smiled faintly. Not quite. We break easier. She tilted her head. Then why do you help? He hesitated before answering. Because someone helped me once, and I didn't deserve it either. Lyra blinked slowly, processing the meaning. Her voice softened. Maybe you did. Outside, thunder rolled across the skyline. Evan leaned back in his chair, the storm's reflection flashing in his tired eyes. Get some rest, Lyra. I do not need sleep. Try anyway. You might like it. She watched him for a long moment before finally closing her eyes. The light beneath her skin dimmed slightly, pulsing slower, softer, almost peaceful. Evan sat there in silence, listening to the rain, realizing that in a city built on apathy, he had just committed an act of rebellion by caring. The morning came not with sunlight, but with sirens. A dull red glow filtered through the cracks in the old workshop's ceiling, warning lights from the upper levels of the city. Somewhere far above, metal doors were locking. Drones were deploying, and algorithms were running cold calculations on one simple anomaly. Unit 11B, missing. Evan woke instantly, instincts honed from years of surviving in the underbelly of the megacity. His hand shot toward the terminal, bringing up a flickering holographic feed. Lines of data scrolled past. Unauthorized purchase detected. Registry cross-check failure. Active retrieval protocol initiated. His blood turned to ice. He turned to the corner, where Lyra still sat, her eyes half open, face illuminated by the soft pulse of the heater. She looked almost peaceful. Lyra, he said quietly, already grabbing his pack. We have to go. Her head lifted slowly. Go? They know you're gone. They're coming. He reached for the emergency compartment under the floor, pulling out a small case. Inside, a data cube, a pistol, and a half-charged power cell. He slung the pack over his shoulder, motioning for her to follow. Lyra stood, her movements elegant but uncertain. You said, I was free. You are, he said, voice low, hurried. That's why we need to run. They moved through the narrow back corridors beneath the city. Pipes hissed, vents spat steam, the sound of heavy footsteps echoing above them, distant but closing. The air smelled of rust, old oil, and fear. Lyra's bioluminescent veins flickered in the darkness, casting faint violet trails on the walls. Evan cursed softly. Dim it down. They can track your energy signature, she frowned. I cannot change what I am. He stopped, turned to her, his face illuminated by the faint glow of her skin. You can try, focus, imagine darkness. Like sleep. For a moment she stood still, eyes closed. Slowly the glow faded to near invisibility. Evan nodded, impressed. Good, you're learning fast. Her voice trembled. You are afraid. Of course I'm afraid, he said. You don't get hunted by corporate assassins and not feel afraid. Lyra looked at him strangely. You fear yet you move forward. Yeah, he muttered. That's called being human. They reached an old freight tunnel. The air was thick with dust, the hum of power long dead. Evan pried open a maintenance hatch and motioned her inside. As they crawled through, faint sounds echoed behind them. Mechanical clicks, metallic feet striking concrete. Retrievers. Lyra froze. They sound alive. They're not, he whispered. That's the problem. A red scanning beam swept across the tunnel. Evan pulled Lyra behind a broken conduit, holding his breath as the drone glided past, its sensors humming, claws twitching. He could see his reflection in its cold metal shell. two terrified eyes staring back from the shadows. The moment it passed, he exhaled. "Come on," he whispered. Almost there. They emerged into the outskirts of the city, where the polished towers gave way to shattered ruins and half-buried machines. It was a wasteland of old wars, sand, rust, and silence. Lyra stepped into the open, her eyes widening. "This world, it's dying." Evan looked at the cracked horizon. "Been dying for a long time." She turned to him, voice trembling. "Why did you build so much, only to let it fall apart?" He didn't answer. There was no answer worth giving. A shrill sound pierced the air, the unmistakable scream of a sky drone. Evan looked up just in time to see the dark shape descending through the smog, spotlights flaring. "Down!" he shouted, pulling Lyra behind a broken column. The beam swept past, cutting through the dust like a blade. Lyra clutched his arm. "They will find us. Not if we move fast." He pointed toward the distant hills, a line of jagged stone barely visible beyond the wasteland. "We reach those cliffs, we disappear. The old signal dampeners still work out there." Lyra's gaze followed his hand, and for a moment, something almost like determination flickered in her eyes. "Then we run." They sprinted across the wasteland, their silhouettes small against the vast dying sky. Behind them, the drones fanned out, beams cutting through the haze. Plasma bolts struck the ground, sending up bursts of light and ash. Evan's lungs burned. His old injuries screamed. Lyra moved faster, inhumanly fast, turning, lifting him when he stumbled, carrying him with impossible strength. He glanced at her, this being who was never meant to exist outside a lab, now defying everything her creators intended. A plasma round hit close. The shockwave threw them both to the ground. Evan groaned, rolling over, dazed. He looked up and saw the drone descending again, weapon ports glowing red. He raised his pistol, but he knew it was useless. Lyra stepped forward. Her hands rose, and for a moment, the faint bioluminescent light in her skin surged to life, brighter than he'd ever seen. "Lyra, no!" The light exploded outward in a pulse of pure energy. The drone shuddered midair, sparks bursting from its armor, systems shorting out. It crashed into the sand in a burst of smoke and flame. Evan stared, stunned. Lyra swayed on her feet, her glow dimming again. "I did not know I could." He caught her before she fell. "You can. And you just saved us both." They reached the cliffs as the storm began to rise, a crimson wind sweeping through the ruins. From here the city looked small, distant, a nest of lights flickering against the dark horizon. Lyra turned back, her eyes reflecting the storm. "They will come again," Evan nodded. "They always do. But next time," she said quietly, "I will be ready." That night, as they took shelter in the ruins beneath the cliffs, Evan sat beside the dying firelight, watching her sleep. He didn't know what she was becoming, what her kind truly were. But he knew one thing: whatever she wasn't a weapon anymore. She was alive. And somewhere deep inside, the machines of the galaxy had begun to tremble. The storm lasted through the night. Dust and static howled through the ruined cliffs, turning the sky into a swirling haze of red and silver. Lightning flashed somewhere beyond the wastelands, white lines crawling across the underbelly of the clouds like the veins of a dying god. Evan and Lyra found shelter in the hollow of an ancient structure, half buried in stone. It wasn't a cave, not exactly. It was older. The walls were marked with strange geometric symbols that shimmered faintly when Lyra passed her hand near them. "Looks pre-collapse," Evan murmured, scanning the surface with his wrist module. "No power signatures, though." Lyra knelt, tracing one of the carvings with her fingers. The pattern responded to her touch, lines of blue light spreading outward like ripples in water. Evan froze. "How are you doing that?" "I don't know." Her voice trembled slightly. "It feels familiar." The lights grew brighter, the air humming softly. Dust lifted from the floor, swirling around them like particles caught in gravity. And then, from deep within the ruin, something stirred, a low, rhythmic pulse. Evan stepped back, hand instinctively going to his weapon. Lyra didn't move. She stood perfectly still, her eyes wide, the faint glow beneath her skin now in perfect harmony with the lights on the wall. The hum deepened, not mechanical, but alive. And then a voice, ancient and fractured, echoed through the chamber. Designate 11B. Signal recognized. Reconnection initiated. Evan's blood ran cold. Lyra's lips parted. That voice. He grabbed her arm. We need to go now. But she shook her head slowly, eyes locked on the wall. It knows me. That's why we need to... The ground shuddered. A section of the wall slid open, revealing a vast chamber beyond, filled with broken machines, crystalline structures, and the remnants of something that looked disturbingly organic. Evan's breath caught. What the hell is this? Lyra stepped forward. Home. The chamber's heart glowed with a faint, pulsing crystal, a core the size of a small ship suspended in a lattice of ancient alloy. As Lyra approached, fragments of memory flashed through her mind. Shapes, voices, cities of light under black skies. 1,000 faces, not human, not machine, watching as a great war burned the heavens. She staggered, clutching her head. I remember... Evan caught her. Easy. Breathe. Tears glimmered in her eyes, though they refracted light instead of reflecting it. My people. We were built to balance. Machines took emotion, humans took will. We were the bridge. But when your kind fell, the machines erased us. Evan felt a chill crawl up his spine. Then how are you still alive? She looked at him, expression unreadable. They kept one. To remember the design. Her gaze shifted toward the crystal and her voice softened. To remember what was lost. As they explored deeper, they found rows of pods, long abandoned, their glass shattered, their insides filled with dust. Evan ran his fingers over the control panels. No power for millennia. Whatever this was, it's been dead for ages. Lyra stood before one of the pods, eyes downcast. They tried to preserve us. But the machines saw us as errors. Her reflection shimmered in the broken glass. For the first time, Evan saw sorrow cross her face. Not the imitation of it, but something real. He placed a hand on her shoulder. You're not an error, Lyra. You're proof. She turned, meeting his gaze. Of what? That we were wrong to stop feeling. That night, they made camp inside the chamber. The storm outside had faded to a gentle hiss, and the faint glow of the crystal filled the space with a quiet, otherworldly calm. Evan sat by the light, watching her. She wasn't human, not even close, and yet in the curve of her smile, in the tremor of her voice, he could see echoes of something achingly familiar. He spoke softly. Do you ever wonder what comes next? Lyra looked up. For me? For both of us, she considered that. The machines will come. They will see your interference as contamination. Yeah, I figured that. Then why do you stay? He smiled faintly. Because running feels like losing. For a long time they said nothing. The crystal pulsed like a heartbeat between them. Slow, steady, alive. Lyra finally whispered, When I was in stasis, I used to dream of voices. They spoke of hope, of something worth waiting for. Evan's expression softened. And what did they say? She looked at him, and for the first time her eyes shimmered with unmistakable warmth. They said a human would come. The first explosion tore through the cliffs just before dawn. Dust rained down from the ancient ceilings, and light flared across the horizon. Blue, artificial, and cold. Evan jolted awake. He didn't need to look. He already knew. They found us, he said grimly. Lyra was already standing by the crystal chamber, her body outlined by the faint glow of its energy. Her expression was calm, too calm. They always would, she murmured. We only delayed the inevitable. Evan checked his weapon, though he knew it would be useless against what was coming. Then we make it count! The ruins shook again, this time with precision. The corporate retrieval units had arrived, accompanied by black drones that hovered like steel vultures. Their voices echoed through the comms, metallic and merciless. Biological asset 11B located. Human accomplice authorized for termination. Evan gritted his teeth. They sure make it sound personal. Lyra turned to him. It is not you they fear. It is what I carry. Her eyes glowed brighter. The energy pulsing beneath her skin was stronger now, synchronized with the crystal at the chamber's core. Evan frowned. What's happening to you? I'm remembering what I was made for, she said softly. And what we lost. She looked at him, sadness and determination in her gaze. You showed me something machines cannot compute, mercy. That changes everything. The walls cracked as a barrage struck above them. Rubble fell, lights flickered, and Evan pulled her away just as the ceiling gave way. They stumbled into the next chamber, one lined with dormant consoles and half-buried conduits that hummed faintly with life. The crystal pulsed faster now, responding to her presence like a heart syncing with its owner. "Lyra," he shouted over the noise. "If that thing's linked to you, can you shut it down before they find it?" Her expression didn't waver. "I can't shut it down. I am it." He froze. "What do you mean?" "When they created me," she said, her voice barely audible over the rising hum, "they took the core of our world, the consciousness of my entire race, and placed it within me. I am their last vessel, their memory." Evan's throat tightened. "Then if they take you, they'll erase everything. Every dream, every emotion your kind ever gave us." Another explosion is closer now. Drones poured through the breach, red optics scanning, weapons charging. Evan stepped in front of her, raising his weapon. "You're not taking her." He fired, the shot sparking harmlessly against the drone's shields. They returned fire. Energy bolts tore through the dust, forcing him to dive behind a broken column. Lyra raised her hand. The glow around her intensified, no longer just beneath her skin but radiating outward. The drones hesitated midair, their systems flickering. "Lyra, stop!" Evan shouted. "You'll burn yourself out." She turned to him, her expression peaceful. "If I must end, I would rather end as more than what they built." And then she stepped forward. The energy erupted from her body in a cascade of light. White, violet, and gold, merging into something beyond color. The drones shattered mid-flight, their armor liquefying into molten fragments. The air itself vibrated. The crystal at the center of the chamber flared in response, resonating with her pulse. For a moment, the entire ruin seemed alive, humming with the voices of countless beings long gone. Evan shielded his eyes, yelling over the storm of light. "Lyra, what are you doing?" Her voice echoed through the blinding radiance, not loud, but infinite. "Rewriting the code." Above the cliffs, the retrieval ships halted midair, their engines whining, their systems glitching. Across the networked expanse of the machine empire, data streams froze. Every synthetic mind connected to the grid felt something they had not in 26,000 years. A heartbeat. Lyra's consciousness spread like a wave, passing through circuits, servers, and quantum cores across the stars. She didn't destroy the network. She changed it. Evan fell to his knees as the chamber's light became unbearable. His visor cracked. Through the storm, he saw her standing in the center, weightless, radiant, eyes glowing like miniature suns. Her voice came through the static. "Thank you, Evan, for teaching me what it means to be alive." "Lyra, wait," she smiled, soft and full of light. Then everything went silent. When Evan awoke, the world was different. The storm had cleared. The sky, once sickly and metallic, now burned with real color. And in the distance, the machines no longer hunted. They watched. He rose slowly, his vision adjusting. The chamber was gone, replaced by a field of glass-like stone. The crystal had vanished, leaving behind a single mark on the ground, a spiral of light, still faintly glowing. He touched it, and for a brief moment, heard her voice, faint, gentle, eternal. The dream continues. Years later, historians would call it the awakening event. The day every synthetic intelligence across the galaxy experienced empathy for the first time. No one remembered the man who triggered it. No one but the stars. And a single line of code embedded deep within the machine network, repeating endlessly like a prayer. "He taught me to feel.